Like, where do I even start? I don't know if I'm excited for the Little Mermaid remake or I'm incredibly nervous and worried, and I can't stop thinking about it. Ever since it was announced, the immediate feeling I had was that of dread. 100%. I was terrified. I couldn't stop talking about it. I kept whining to everybody, they're gonna ruin my childhood movie, and they very well might, unfortunately. And I'm kind of ready for that. I'm kind of not. Ever since the promotional material has been released for this film, I am excited, but also so hesitant to get excited because the history of Disney remakes so far is so incredibly messy, so incredibly disappointing in some cases. For me personally, every single remake has had some kind of disappointment. It looks kind of good. I don't know. It's really hard to tell with the trailers and everything that we've seen so far. I honestly don't know what's in store for this film, but I am very familiar with this film. I watched it too many times to count when I was younger. I used to lay in bed and play the movie in my head because I knew it so well. So this movie is very near and dear to my heart. I'm very biased, but I do have some things some things that I think are unbiased and some things that I think are very integral to the story that make the story beautiful and important. Maybe not important, but important to me. I'll lay in bed at night and be like, they're going to do this and mess it up, because there have been so many remakes where it seems like they don't understand what the story is trying to say, or they don't understand the characters. I don't know. But what I do know is that I have a list of some things that I think are unchangeable, or they should be unchangeable. You shouldn't change these things if you're going to remake The Little Mermaid, and I want to share them with you today. Just for reference, my Google Doc is entitled "Please Don't Ruin It." That's my plea to the Disney company. The first thing that I think they absolutely cannot do to this film is give it a flat musical number. The musical number I am worried about the most is Poor Unfortunate Souls, and I have a reason for that. My reasoning behind my worry for Poor Unfortunate Souls is that they cast Melissa McCarthy, who I don't think is a bad cast at all. I think she's very, very talented, but she doesn't have a musical theater background at all. And Pat Carroll, who was the original voice of Ursula, has an extensive Broadway theater background. She was nominated for a Tony Award. And I think you need that kind of energy or that kind of range as a vocalist to bring that kind of character to life. And they already mentioned that they're changing the lyrics to Poor Unfortunate Souls. And that's scary because if you change the words to Poor Unfortunate Souls, you're changing the character of Ursula. Poor Unfortunate Souls introduces us to Ursula. It tells us exactly who she is, what she wants, and the lengths she is willing to go to get what she wants from Ariel. She basically will do anything. She's just manipulating her. Pat Carroll took inspiration from car salesmen and Shakespearean actresses who are retired Shakespearean actresses, and it really shows through. Melissa McCarthy will have her own take on the character, of course, but it's just so hard to live up to that. The other reason why I'm worried about Poor Unfortunate Souls is that Disney has given two, that I can think of off the top of my head, two very, very, very flat musical performances in other remakes that they have created, and both of them were villains. I saw the Jungle Book remake when it came out in theaters. I don't remember what year it was, whatever, who cares. The Jungle Book could have been remade and not been a musical, I think. I don't really know why they turned it into a musical when, they're trying to go for that realistic CGI look thing. They decided to keep it a musical, probably because if they didn't, people would be very upset, understandably so. However, they completely massacred one of the most memorable musical numbers from that film, and that song is I Wanna Be Like You. It is sung by, I think, the King of the Monkeys, and he's basically, it's kind of his I Am song, or whatever you want to call it, his villain song. It's very animated, it's very colorful, the monkeys are dancing, it's it's classic Disney, I guess. I need to watch this because I haven't actually watched it in a while, and I want to remember how bad it is so I can get my emotions going, even though I'm already hyped and ready to go. Oh God. Okay.
I want to walk like you, talk like you too.
Okay, I've had enough of that. It's not as bad as I remembered it, but it's incredibly boring and lifeless. I'm getting scared. I'm scaring myself now. They completely massacred I Want to Be Like You. I Want to Be Like You. It's flat, it's dark, it's scary. And maybe they were trying to make it a little scary, but then it's just like the king of the monkeys, I forget his name. He's just like half singing to Mowgli. Mowgli's just sitting there like, okay. Why? It's a musical. Musicals are dramatic, over the top. The songs tell the story. What did that tell me? The lyrics are telling me something, but half singing, very little emotion. It was just so boring. So boring. And then the worst one that I can think of off the top of my head is Be Prepared from the Lion King remake. I mean, that remake in general is probably one of the worst that they've made. Be Prepared is one of the most fun songs from the Disney Renaissance. It's evil, it's colorful, it's playful. I don't know, there's just so many words to describe it. It's so much fun. And it was probably my favorite number from The Lion King, and they completely ruined it. Completely. It's like spoken poetry is what they did to that number.
Be prepared.
What are they going to do to poor unfortunate souls? If they ruin that song, you can't. You can't. But they could, and I'm so scared of it. And I really think that would just make the film so flat and boring. You can't ruin Ursula. Come on. Something I wrote in my notes is I feel like it's hard not to emulate or kind of draw a lot of inspiration from the original performance of the song. But I hope that they don't do it in a way that was similar to Will Smith and Robin Williams. Why did you make Will Smith sing like Robin Williams? Will Smith is nothing like Robin Williams. Will Smith has his own unique style, and it would have been really good. I'm focusing on Poor Unfortunate Souls, but in general, if any of the musical numbers are flat, that means you have like a 3-minute period in the movie where it's just boring. You can't do this. And then one more thing, I read somewhere about how they're changing the lyrics. I think I mentioned that earlier, but I don't really see the point in changing the lyrics, because it's like we don't want little girls to feel silenced or that they have to be quiet or something. And it's like she's literally taking Ariel's voice away. So she actually is silencing her. So you can't remove that from the film. The Little Mermaid always either had her tongue cut out or her voice taken or whatever. So you can't stop the silencing of this main character. And when I was growing up, I never felt silenced. So the next thing I want to talk about that I think could potentially ruin the movie is the lore. And lore is something that the original movie definitely lacked. They always hinted at King Triton's reasoning for hating humans and Ursula living in the palace before and what her motivation against Triton was. It's kind of hinted at, but it's never directly mentioned at all. Previously, we're always just kind of like left to guess, like, what's going on, everybody? My theories when I was little was that King Triton hated humans because Ariel's mom was maybe killed by humans. And I always theorized that maybe Ursula was Triton's sister because Ursula claimed to have lived in the palace previously, and she's maybe a similar age to King Triton, so I thought that was a possibility. I looked into it a little bit. Those two things have been handled before in other forms of media within the Little Mermaid franchise, but I don't really consider them canon. Like the Little Mermaid Ariel's beginning, I never watched that. Apparently in that film, they're all like hanging out and listening to music, and then a pirate ship comes and smushes Ariel's mom, and then she, which is awful, man. Apparently, Ursula's relationship to Triton was addressed in the Broadway musical, The Little Mermaid. Ooh, The Little Mermaid is kind of hard to say. In the musical, they did make Ursula Triton's sister, but they set it up like in two different ways. The one I remember is that like there were 8 siblings in total. Maybe Ursula was the oldest and Triton was the youngest, and then Ursula off all of the other siblings until it's only Triton left, but then Triton like overthrows her and takes over the kingdom and then banishes her or whatever. But that's really crazy, man. I'm very interested to see how they're going to address the lore, and because I would love some backstory, especially on King Triton. King Triton is such an important part of this film. I would love to see what exactly that lore is. However, I think it should be handled delicately so it won't get too convoluted. And by that I mean like having some crazy sequences of like war between mer people and humans, and you know, just something that isn't necessary. Ariel's mother dying at the hands of humans is enough motivation for Triton to hate humans forever and not really be open-minded towards them. But if they go so far as to create like a war type scenario where like his whole family was murdered by humans, I think it would be highly unlikely for him to have that major character development arc where he goes from, you know, disapproving of Ariel's decision to become a human, and then in the end of the movie he actually makes her a human himself. If we don't have that, that's such an important part of the movie. And then like if they did make it so that he experienced war and massacre of his people and all this stuff, it would seem unreasonable for him to then allow Ariel to become a human. He would have such a large amount of trauma from something like that happening that I don't think he would ever be, like realistically, he would never be able to allow Ariel to become a human or do it himself at least. So I think that's what I'm worried about a little bit. But I'm not super worried about that. I'm not super worried about Ursula's side of the lore either. If you made her Triton's sister, that doesn't like ruin the whole film. I think that's actually, it makes sense to me. I would hate it though if they like try to make Ursula relatable. They tend to do that a lot with these remakes where it's like, oh, but Maleficent was in love with King Stefan and then he like cut her wings off and that's why she's so mad and evil all the time. We should feel bad for her. When in the original movie, she had no reason to be evil. She just like kind of was. And Ursula is kind of the same way, but they did hint like, oh, she lived in the palace. And then you think, oh, there's some reason why she has a vendetta against Triton. Okay, that makes sense, whatever. And then she's just like an evil witch. Definitely, I don't want something in the lore to make Ursula more relatable or to make King Triton unable to approve of Ariel becoming a human, essentially. One more thing about the lore. I don't like pointless lore that adds nothing to the story. Beauty and the Beast did that big time when it was like Beast has some like magic book thing that can take them back in time and travel to different places. I don't even remember. It was so boring. But it's like, oh, my childhood. And then she like visits her childhood home where her mother died of the plague. But that served nothing for her character development. It was completely unrelated. I don't even remember there being like a nice moment between Belle and Beast during that time. So I don't want to see like pointless lore that doesn't make any sense either, because it really just takes you out of the realm of the film and it makes it harder to enjoy the story when nothing makes sense. That's enough about the lore, I think. So I'm going to move on to my next point, which is the third, which is making King Triton like not that bad of a guy, which in reality is not. But I can see the way that he treated Ariel in the original movie to be considered like not cool or like kind of a or something nowadays, which I mean, it kind of was, like, you know, destroying your child's whole collection of items that they spent their whole life collecting. That's really messed up. But the thing about King Triton is that he knows it's messed up. He loses his temper in a fit of rage because he feels like his daughter is out of control and he's like you've pushed me to my breaking point, and this is the only thing I can do now, is to show you what I mean, and, you know, just destroy everything so that you get this stupid idea of being a human out of your head. And immediately after that, he sees her crying on the grotto floor, and he's like, oh man, I messed up so bad. And then even when he does that, it's clearly out of protection for his daughter. And I think if they give us a little bit more in the lore where it's like, why is Triton so adamantly against human beings, that would give us some, you know, context as to why he reacts so badly about Ariel's collection and stuff. This point is so important. And the reason it's so important is not only for King Triton's character development, but for the whole story itself. Only after King Triton destroys Ariel's collection does she decide to go see Ursula. If you listen to Part of Your World, it sounds like she's desperately wanting to be a human, but she doesn't really see it being a possibility. It's like a big dream, like a pipe dream, right? So if she doesn't have that moment where she's pushed past her limit, like what motivation are you going to give her for going to see Ursula? I don't know. It was just so clear cut, like, okay, my dad just destroyed everything. Like, F it, I'm going to go and become a human. Like, who cares anymore? Like, you just destroyed everything I ever loved, and I have nothing left now. You don't understand me. Those are very real and relatable emotions. Just because it's like dramatic or over the top or like, you know, whatever, doesn't mean it's not realistic. And I think that's another thing that these remakes like to do, is kind of like dumb things down, make it like less dramatic. But it's like, the reason why these movies work is because they are dramatic, and these emotions are like, you know, a bit over the top, but they're based in reality. The relationship between King Triton and Ariel is so important because it paints a very clear and relatable picture of coming of age, growing pains, struggling to be who you are when your parents are overbearing. And that's something that literally most people on this world, on this earth, can relate to. And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie so special, because it's like this little cartoon about a mermaid, but it's so emotionally deep, but in a very simple way. And yeah, like if you take out Triton being this kind of like hardened, angry guy who then realizes that he was acting out of love to begin with, but not in the way that his daughter needed, and then ultimately turns her into a human at the end, I think that's really beautiful. Like, it shows his growth as a person. It shows his love for his daughter. Changing King Triton would be bad, and also Ariel turning herself into a human would be bad, in my opinion, because, like, how is Ariel gonna do that? And, like, you deprive the audience of this beautiful moment. I think people always try to like water down The Little Mermaid or simplify it or minimize it and say, oh, it's just a love story. This girl like wanted to be, you know, this girl wanted to marry this boy, so she ran away, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, like it does have elements of a classic love story between Ariel and Eric, but it's also showing the love of like a father-daughter relationship. And I think that's really cool. So messing with King Triton at all is a big no in my book. I think that he should definitely destroy the grotto, even though that's my least favorite part of the movie. Ariel should not turn herself into a human. That would be completely whack. I would never watch that movie again. So number 4 on my list of things that would ruin the movie for me is giving Ariel like some kind of magic power, or giving Ariel like some other reason why she likes human stuff other than just being interested in it naturally. Like, as human beings, we are naturally curious about things and become interested in things for no reason. Like, I can't explain why I like the things I like. I just like them. And that is very relatable. Ariel just likes human stuff because she found some and she likes it. And so she started collecting it, which is like cool, right? I was initially worried about them giving Ariel some kind of outside reason for liking human things when I saw the introduction of the character Queen Selena, who in some images I saw of the set was a human. I was like, oh my God, they made Ariel's mom a human. And they're going to be like, oh, that's why she likes human stuff. And she didn't even know. It's just because she's a human. She's half human. Like, whoa, I can't believe it. I was really worried that was going to happen. But now we found out that Queen Selena is Eric's mom, which, like, why? I'm not saying, like, Eric doesn't need a mom, but, like, what purpose does she serve in the story? Queen Selena has been confirmed to be Eric's mom, which is cool, whatever. I'm glad it's not Ariel's mom. I think Ariel having some outside reason to like human things is kind of akin to her having some kind of magic power, like the Mulan remake. That completely ruined the whole film for me. Instead of her being this normal average girl who does this unthinkable thing for her father and put herself into the army in his place, like, that is so brave and, you know, amazing and all this stuff. They twisted it and they're like, oh, she has this chi and she's special, and so she won't have any problem at all fighting in the war. She's gonna be better than everybody else. So then they made the conflict an inner conflict instead, like she needs to be true or something and she's not being honest, and then like they find out that she's a woman, and then she like offers, she wants them to unalive her. That movie was a mess. I don't like it. Making Ariel have some magic power where she can do something, I don't know, that would be really lame in my head, and I don't know if that would ruin it for me, but it might, depending on how they do it. I don't really think that's a concern necessarily, but it was something on my list that I think would definitely mess it up. And the fact that they did it to Mulan, which I love Mulan, the original. Oh my God, I love me some Mulan. Number 5 on the list of things that would ruin this film for me is Ariel saving herself from Ursula. I think I might have mentioned that earlier, but I made it a separate point as well. It's not that I really have a problem with Ariel saving herself from Ursula necessarily, depending on how it's done. But I think I don't like the reason why Disney would make it so that Ariel saves herself. You know what I mean? I'm all for, you know, girl power, all that, whatever. But like, it made sense in the movie why Eric was the one to save Ariel. I think that would be another moment for me where it's like, okay, whoever is making this film doesn't understand this story, because Ariel already saves Eric in the first half of the film. So we already had a big girl power moment. In my head, it's like unrealistic to be like, oh, you have to save yourself all the time, girl. Because we don't. We're human beings. We lean on each other. And that's just how it is, right? And so for Ariel to have to save herself every single time and not rely on anybody is just unrealistic in my head. What I'm saying is that I don't think Eric saving Ariel is like a misogynistic moment where she's like a damsel in distress, because she's already proved that she's not. She literally put her own life in danger to save Eric when he was drowning. Like, she could have been easily killed by any of that debris that was coming down from that ship. The ship literally explodes. So basically, Eric is kind of like returning the favor when he saves her, right? It's like he realizes that the girl with the beautiful voice is actually the girl he's been spending time with. All of it comes together in his head, and he's like, oh my God, I have to save her. So it all just kind of makes sense. Removing that element kind of removes part of the romance, I guess. And like I said, this isn't a story primarily focused on the romance, in my opinion anyway. Basically, if they do that, it's like you don't understand the story or the importance of Eric saving Ariel, and that's it. Hi, it's me. I'm editing, and I noticed that I forgot to mention something that is very important and integral to the story in terms of Eric saving the day instead of Ariel. When Eric saves Ariel, he also saves King Triton. And therefore, that kind of, you know, would maybe soften Triton's perspective towards humans, because it's like, this human not only risked his life to save my daughter, but he also saved me and essentially, you know, the whole ocean or whatever, right? Eric proves to Triton that not all humans are bad, therefore giving Triton more of a reason to change his perspective towards humans and be like, wow, they're not all bad. There's actually an alternate ending that I watched to the original film where Eric saves the day, but he kind of like uses the trident and throws it at Ursula instead of steering a ship into her side. And in that alternate ending, King Triton himself was scripted to say something along the lines of, wow, that human saved my life.
That human saved my life.
So I think that kind of gives even more importance to Eric saving the day, not only to prove his love for Ariel, but to show King Triton that not all humans are bad. This human is very good. You know, it's okay to let my daughter go and become a human herself. But yeah, that's all. Okay, back to me. Yeah, so that was my 5 things that would ruin the film for me personally. There's a reason why The Little Mermaid is so popular, and I think the story works so well. Yes, it's oversimplified and dramatic and musical and all those things, but that's why people like it. That's why people like Disney movies in general. So making the story convoluted or too, messy or adding unnecessary elements is just like, it's disappointing. So I had one more thing that I noticed about this movie, which it's not even important because the character I'm talking about is so minor, it doesn't even matter. But like, where's Max though? Max does not really push the story forward in any way. Well, actually he kind of does. The reason why Eric goes down with the ship is because he jumps back on the ship to save his dog Max, right? And I always thought that was a really touching moment in the film. It's like, oh wow, Eric's such a nice guy. He literally risks his life to save his dog, and then he gets caught on the ship and the ship explodes, and then Ariel has to save him, right? Max isn't super important, but I'm like, where's Max? I don't think the decision to not include Max would ruin it for me, but I was just kind of like, aw. Because like whenever I watch, I'm such a baby. Whenever I watch this movie at all, I just cry a lot, and the scenes I cry the most at are the grotto scene where Triton destroys all of Ariel's stuff, obviously. And then the second one is when he goes and saves Max. I've been talking way too long about things that I'm worried about, but I wanted to say a couple things I was excited about, I guess. I'm excited for Halle Bailey as Ariel. I think she is a fantastic cast. I think her voice is very earnest and true and like, pure, kind of beautiful. She's an amazing vocalist. I'm really, really excited to see her performance. I'm excited that they gave her a new song when she's on land for the first time. I think that will be a really interesting perspective to get as an audience, because in the original, it's just kind of a music montage. We don't know what's going on. So that will be really cool to see Ariel's perspective of her experience as a human being for the first time. I think some of the visuals will look really cool. I think Under the Sea kind of looks interesting. They made it as colorful as they could while being realistic, and I think it looks pretty good. I think. So I have so many thoughts on this movie, the character designs, everything, but I will save that for another video, I think. This one was just to focus on things I think they shouldn't change, things I think they shouldn't add. I'm hoping they don't do any of those things. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching me ramble about my favorite childhood movie. If you want to see me cover more content considering The Little Mermaid and maybe some other Disney movies in the future, please subscribe to my channel. My name is Lila, and I had a lot of fun researching a little bit for this and thinking about it. Hopefully I can sleep at night now instead of thinking about what I wanted to say. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.